Hey everyone, John here and welcome back to part 2 of this 2-part series. In the last tutorial, I walked you through how I enhanced this shot using Continuum, Sapphire, Mocha Pro and for the first time Silhouette. And in this tutorial, we're going to follow along the same theme. This is less rock and more rap, I guess, but still a music video style. And I'm going to be covering a number of the same techniques, plus some different techniques that I used for this one, including things like sky replacement. If you haven't watched a previous tutorial, that's not mandatory, but I definitely recommend taking a look at that. But for now, let's just jump into this and see what's going on. Now, as with the previous tutorial, the first step is to create a 3D camera solve in order to be able to place the 3D text correctly in the scene. And once again, I use Mocha Pro for that. You can see this is a little different from the previous shot. The camera sort of tracks around. And when I first found this shot, I was really interested to see how well Mocha Pro could handle it, and I was really surprised. So I'm going to walk you step by step through this just to show you how fast it is and how accurate it is. So I'll launch Mocha Pro, and I'm just going to turn off my previous work there. Come up and select the Create New Mask ML layer. Click on the talent. Click again to select the legs. Select the Pick tool. Come down to the Matte tab, activate Generate Object Matte, and I'm going to give this a Dilate Matte setting of 30. And click Render. So this Dilate Matte setting of 30 will just make sure that everything is within the masked area, just so the 3D camera solve has the best chance of being as accurate as possible. And I'm not going to hit pause here because you can see how fast that's working. Great. So now I'll come over to the Camera Solve tab. There's my previous average error of 0.92. So good. I'm going to clear that and I'm going to come up and just make sure that this is a matte, so the Camera Solve can recognize that, and come down and hit Solve. Solve details are up here on the top right, and you'll see how fast this is. That's it, done. Ground plane is in pretty much the right position, so I haven't got to do anything there. I've got a 0.94, so slightly higher than the previous one, but still excellent. That's ready to go. In the previous tutorial, I didn't turn off unnecessary track points, but I'm going to do it this time to save time in After Effects. So I just got to find a track point to which I want to attach the 3D text, which is probably something around here. So I'll select that one, right-click on it, and choose Toggle Unselected Visibility. Ah, that's much better. Okay, so then I would save and close that up. And under the 3D camera data settings, I've switched this to nulls because I don't want lights in the scene. I'm going to put my own lights in and click Create 3D Data. Much better, right? It's only got one track point. And that's it. See how fast that was? That's unbelievably fast. That's probably one of the fastest 3D solves I've ever done. So easy. So the next stage was very similar to the previous tutorial. Just create some text, call this dance, and make it 3D. Hold down the Shift key and parent it to the null. There it is there. Just going to quickly scale that up just by dragging like that. Maybe actually I'll just center it. Control C. And boom, that's it. And I did, just adjust it slightly, brought it down a little bit. Just made sure it was in the right position. I think I actually moved it across to the left a bit too. Great. And of course, the next step is to extrude the text and add the lights and make it look worthy of a music video. And I've worked in a pre-comp here as well, as I did in the previous tutorial, because I knew I wanted to apply effects to the 3D text. And interestingly, in this version of After Effects that I'm using, there was a new feature added where you can create an instance of a 3D layer in order to be able to apply effects to it without pre-composing. And I did try that. I'm just going to go into this 04 AComp this is a pre-render, and we've jumped ahead a little bit. There's a few effects in here we'll look at in a moment, but if you have a look here, see that flickering? I was actually getting flickering happening using the instance of the text. To create that instance, all you do is you right-click on the 3D layer, come up to Create, and choose Create 3D Layer Instance. And I thought, great. What that does is it turns the layer off, creates the instance, and this is actually created using CC Composite. And doing that allows me to follow that with other effects. So it just meant that I didn't have to pre-compose this. But unfortunately, I was getting this flashing, and I couldn't work it out. I tried turning off 32-bit, and it seemed to go away. Then it seemed to come back. And also, see how the text is much brighter? For some reason, doing it this way just didn't seem to work. So I wanted to just point that out to you. That may be fixed by now or may not. I don't know. But I just resorted to the old way of pre-composing everything. And what I also did to save time was I pre-rendered this. So I pre-rendered it with an alpha channel at high resolution, just using a high resolution ProRes format. And of course, once that's pre-rendered, it's just a video file. So it means that my workflow from there on is much faster. So just a couple of things that I wanted to point out as far as the 3D text goes. Let's just do a quick breakdown of this 3D text setup. I've copied the camera into here so that the text knows where to be in 3D space. I've created an environment light. And once again, I'm using the footage itself as the environment, just to help the 3D text feel more realistically comped into the scene. And what I'll do is I'll just turn off the proxy so we can take a look at that. So I'm going to turn both of those lights off. So if I turn on the environment light, we're definitely reflecting the environment. I don't think I did too much to this. I haven't changed any of the transform properties, just increased the intensity and had it cast shadows. And of course, you can see it's picking up the reflection of the environment or the specular of the environment, but it's way too dark. So what I did was I used a parallel light right up above the text. Because remember, inside the footage here, we've got this light at the top. It's fairly open at the sides, but I figured there'd be some sort of directional light from the top lighting this. So I didn't spend too much time agonizing over matching the scene, but I just felt with that directional light at the top, it gives you this pinged specular at the top of the text. And it's a little darker at the bottom, and got a bit of illumination coming, at the bottom here on the sides, maybe from the light that's coming, through this area or being bounced up above. I think overall it felt fairly well sort of matched into the scene. Just going to close 4A. Just with those two lights. So you can actually get quite far just using the environment, but the parallel lights just help, finish the illumination of the text. I'm just going to turn that proxy back on because you can see how slow that is. And if I'm adding effects to that, which we're going to do next, it just slows everything down. So once again, high-res proxy is a great time saver. Look at that. Boom. All right, so we'll come back to the text in a moment. But first of all, I want to show you how I did the sky replacement. So if you have a look at the ground, you can see it's wet. So this is after the rain. And the sky is overcast. It's a pretty dreary day, so it could definitely benefit from sky replacement. So to do that, what I did was I used a still frame, or one frame from a sequence from Grayscale Gorilla's Ultimate Sky series. So I thought that was going to be pretty good. And in order to make it work in the 3D scene, I created a new solid and I applied CC Environment. Let me just turn that on. And for the environment, I chose the Ultimate Sky. And because we have that 3D solved camera in here, you can see it rotates, which is really nice. I did apply some curves to that because that's the original and it didn't really match the scene. Let me just turn on the footage. You can see it doesn't quite work, right? So I've just used a little bit of curves. So I just pulled down the red in the midtones just to make it a little more cyan. And I've increased the brightness in the gamma there in the midtones and just in the highlights, just brought that right down. Otherwise, you can see if I just bring that up, it's a little bright in there, but just bringing that down and making them a little flatter. So I didn't want it to be, 360-degree different from the look that the original footage had, but, just enough to make it feel like a nicer day. And you may be noticing down here, we've got this kind of fall off here. So let's just go over to our Luma key. And the whole Luma key and that fall off there is done using BCC plus Luma key with Pixel Chooser. So if I just turn that off, that's what we've got. And under mask in the Pixel Chooser, I've chosen rectangle. I just turn that off. That's what we see. So that's going to key the entire shot. But just by turning on rectangle there and adding a bit of feather, I've just feathered that out. And this is pretty rough and dirty. The trees are a little crunchy. I could come into my settings and just, play around with the post blur a little bit. There are like some controls in here, but I felt that it was moving fairly fast. Let me just turn off that and turn the sky back on. So I just sort of faded out the sky layer just into the original background. It looks like a bit of haze there, doesn't it? If I just adjust that a little bit more, just by adjusting the mask center on the Y, if I bring it right down, then we start to get this kind of look, and I thought that wasn't very good. So I just compromised with that. And like I said, it moves fairly fast, so you don't really notice. But you do get a lot of value up here. Thought that actually works quite well. And with that CC environment working with the 3D camera keyframes, then everything looks really nice. Okay, so the next step was to add some effects to the text, and for that I've used Sapphire, and specifically Sapphire S-Effect and Sapphire S-Rays. So inside of S-Effect, I chose a preset. I'm just going to click to load the preset browser, and it was this one here, 8-Bit Maze by Alan. Gives it a kind of Tron-esque, kind of 8-bit retro look. You can see how quickly that previews because I've pre-rendered the text, which is very, very useful. I'm going to close that up, and I'm not going to launch Sapphire Effect Builder here because I didn't change any of the settings, but I did add some keyframes, and I've also added S-Rays and keyframed that. So if we have a look here at Effect Opacity under S-Effect, I've got it on 0, and then when I want it to turn on, I've keyframed Effect Opacity up to 100%, and at the same time, I've keyframed the Sapphire Rays Effect Opacity up to 100%. So that's all I've done for keyframing. It's just basically turn it off and on, then off using hold keyframes. So toggle hold keyframe there. And just set those up, copied and pasted them along the timeline, and just kind of art directed this a little bit. I liked using the Sapphire Rays because those volumetric rays just make it look a little more interesting. And in a moment, I'm going to show you how I use BCC Color Link to colorize the background based on this effect when it turns on and turns off. All right. And you may notice here that S-Rays Center XY is also keyframed. And the reason I did that, if we just select S-Rays, you can see there's the Center XY control point there. The reason I did that is because this is obviously a 3D scene and S-Rays is a 2D effect. So in order to get the light rays to shoot out from the text correctly, you can see that's moving there. I've just animated the Center XY just to move it to the right as the camera pans around so that at the end here, we have those rays shooting out to the left. If I have that back here, then we're going to have the rays out like that, which looks a bit weird. So I wanted them to come out that way. So that's why I keyframed Center XY. Just a little fake there. All right, so the next stage is to get the talent to be in front of the text, just like we did in the previous tutorial. And once again, for that, I turn to Silhouette. And here's the completed version of that, just with the proxy rendered. So looking pretty good. So I'll just turn that off. And you can see I have Silhouette and BCC plus Light Wrap, like the previous tutorial. So what I'll do is I'll just turn off Light Wrap for a moment. And let's just launch the Silhouette interface. Okay, so here in Silhouette, you can see I have 3 nodes plus the output node and all ML, so machine learning nodes. And the first one is Mask ML. And just by way of review, just coming in and clicking on the talent, just like we did with Matte Assist ML in Mocha Pro. To create those keyframes, you can see I've done a few keyframes just to give the Matte Assist ML something to work with. And followed that with Matte Assist ML. So that's going to fill in all of the other frames, just like that. And followed that with the Matte Refine ML node. And Matte Refine ML node does a great job of bringing back the hair detail. And with this one, it's not quite as important as the previous one because we can't see as much of her hair, but it definitely makes a difference. If you want to see how I did that step by step, you can watch the previous tutorial, or you can check out some of the other new Silhouette tutorials on the Boris Effects YouTube channel. But suffice to say that it was very quick, just took a few minutes to create that matte, and it was more than good enough for this particular project. And again, by way of review, as I did in the previous tutorial, I followed that with BCC plus light wrap, and just again, used the text, in this case, the title comp, as the background for the light wrap, just to pull in some of those brighter pixels. This area around here, although we've, keyed out the sky, doesn't really need it, but I thought this area did. It's just a little bit dark. You can see around there, but with that BCC plus light wrap, just comps her a little bit better into this scene. And, her hair looks pretty good. Even for this low detail, just this HD shot, thought it actually does a pretty good job without me having to do much at all. See, that's quite a nice result there. Definitely good enough for this. And it's not finished yet as well, of course. There's more effects to apply. So once again, in my workflow, leaning into those new Silhouette tools to create really quick mattes for these kind of projects. Great workflow. So the next step was to add the lighting effect to the ground. And again, for that, I've used Sapphire, specifically the 8-bit maze preset we looked at before. But I've also used some Mocha Pro and Silhouette. So you can see the effect around this, stage here. And I didn't want the effect to affect that stage, so I've cut that out using Silhouette. But let's take a look at the actual lighting first. I've done that inside this comp called Ground Lights. So I've got a copied and pasted camera here with all the keyframes from Mocha Pro. And the effects I've used are Texture Flux, which is a kind of generator effect. And I followed that with the same 8-bit maze preset in S-Effects. So we get that look. And to cut out the stage, that's this layer here, again, I've used Silhouette. And I've used, for this one, just Mask ML and Matte Assist ML. I didn't need to refine the edge of this. So just a few clicks on the stage, and then right-clicking in the background just to make sure none of the background is selected. Adding a couple of keyframes, and then following that with Matte Assist ML, just to fill in all of the other frames there. And it didn't have to have perfect edges, although that looks pretty good, doesn't it? Going to close that up. And that's a separate layer sitting above the ground lights. Let me just turn off the proxy here. Just like that. So overall, it's looking pretty good. But what I really wanted to do was have the environment in which the 3D text has been placed react to the lighting or the lighting effect of the text as it illuminates. And for that, I've used BCC Color Link. And as the text flashes, we get this sort of orange light fall off on the ground and a little bit on the overpass. It's not affecting the sky, and it's not really affecting the more distant background. And that's because it's being controlled by BCC's Depth Map ML effect. So let's break this down. There's a slightly different approach to what I normally do with Color Link. Normally, I'll apply Color Link directly to the footage layer that I'm working with. But here, there's a few reasons why I didn't do that. So let's walk through it. What I've done is I've actually applied Color Link to an adjustment layer using the Overlay Blend mode. So adjustment layers, of course, affect all of the layers below. So this way it's going to affect not only the background, the main footage, but also the ground lights and the stage. It's not affecting the talent or the title because I put her and the title above it. And I've also followed it with the Sapphire UltraGlow effect. So by putting color link on a separate layer, on an adjustment layer, I can use other effects as well. But how am I controlling it so that it only flashes when the text flashes? Well, I'll show you. Remember the keyframes we set here, or the keyframes I set? Basically, the off state, 0% for effects opacity, then 100, and then off again. So what I've done, I've used the effect opacity parameter for rays as the control. And under color link, if I press E to reveal the expression, I've actually linked the opacity of this layer just by grabbing the expression pick whip up to the effect opacity of rays. So anytime rays is at 0, the effect opacity of that adjustment layer is 0. Anytime rays becomes 100, we see that effect. See what's happening? Just like that. And I just for the sake of the exercise, I want to show you how this looks applying color link directly to the layer. So let's just turn this off, and I've got it applied here. It's exactly the same settings, okay? So that's what it looks like. And the reason it's gone like this flat orange is because I have the blend mode set to normal. But if I do choose something like overlay, obviously not only is it not affecting the layers above it, which we could have pre-composed to be fair, but it's also a different look. It's just not the right color. So I did experiment with applying it directly to the layer, but I wasn't quite able to get the color that I wanted. And obviously I can't follow that with other effects and have them affected in the same way. So I decided, let me just delete that. I decided to try something different and use color link on an adjustment layer. And just getting back to the depth map, let me just turn this on. So there's my BCC plus depth map ML. Very nice. So an instant depth map. And I just did a couple of minor changes to this. From the default mapping mode of min-max, I just changed it to guided and just clicked here for guide far and chose the sky as the distance. And for guide near, just chose the front of the stage as guide near. And just slightly tweaked the settings a little bit, just so it's a little bit brighter here and a little bit darker in the background. So just crush those levels a little bit. So that was my map. And then I've used that as a matte for the color link layer. So that way, when the color link's turned on, we're getting it affecting the foreground, and we're getting it affecting the overpass here, but this is in the distance, the sky, and this area here is in the distance. So that's why it's not affecting that. So I could have done this with masks and whatever, but it's just so handy to be able to do that with a depth map. And just one other thing to keep in mind is that color link and many other continuum effects actually have the depth map built into the pixel chooser. Just twirl that open. You can see down here, depth map ML. Okay, but in this case, I'm not only wanting to affect color link, I'm also wanting to affect the UltraGlow effect as well. So that's why I've used it as a separate map and just chosen it as a matte for that layer. And the result is a pretty nice look that just helps integrate that 3D text into the scene a little bit better. And the final step, which is something that I often do with these kind of projects, is to add a few adjustment layers just to add the finishing touches. And that consisted of an UltraGlow adjustment layer, bit of Sapphire UltraGlow, just to add a little bit of bloom overall. Another UltraGlow layer masked off just to this floor area, just to bring those lights up a little bit, make them a little warmer. And you can see how that UltraGlow as an adjustment layer above everything is pulling some of that glow back onto that stage layer as well, so helping with that integration a little better. And finishing it off with ColorFuse, Sapphire ColorFuse, just with the default settings, really. I didn't do anything other than apply the effect, and that just gives it a nice subtle grade, increases the contrast, increases the vibrance, and finishes this off quite nicely. So let's take a look at the final look once again. And there you have it, another example of using Boris FX's tools inside After Effects to give a music video a makeover. To learn more about what you've seen here, you can visit borisfx.com, and you can also download a trial version. If you'd like to know anything more about what I've shown you in any detail, please leave a comment. But for now, this is John. I'll see you in the next tutorial.